clicking. What are we doing?
Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to the D-I-Yerba Mate soda workshop. As all of you are probably aware, the goal is to learn how to make our own mate soda, a la Club Mate. I have a buddy Carl here who's going to be helping me run cameras and the slides. So Carl, you mind advancing? So first, I want to go into a bit of background of Yerba Mate and Club Mate soda so we know where we're coming from. So Carl.
Oh, cameras?
No.
Thanks.
So Yerba Mate is a plant. It's sort of a tea. It comes out of a shrub that is related to a holly. It is grown in South America in the area circled. So Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil primarily, and is consumed all throughout South America. Traditionally, it is consumed steeped as a tea, and so and it's very iconic for being served in this hollowed out gourd, which they also call a mate. So the mate is poured in loose leaf into the gourd, then hot water is repeatedly added over the gourd and drank back out through the filter straw, which is known as a bombilla. And so they continuously steep as they go. So as most of you are probably aware, Club Mate is a German soda. However, so how do we get from South America into Germany? So actually started back many, many years ago. In 1924, a man named G. Lattier moved it over to Germany. Somebody before him had already started brewing a mate carbonated beverage, and he bought the license to produce it and started releasing it under the name Sekt Brante. Then in 1957, the Sekt Brante brewery had a merger over a marriage with a man named Hans Sauernheiser that went on and expanded it widely throughout Germany. It paused briefly during the war. And then in 1994, the brewery sold the recipe to the Loscher Brewery, also down in Bavaria, and they rebranded it as Club Mate and released it to start competing with the burgeoning energy soda market around Jolt Cola and things like that. So nowadays, it is consumed in vast quantities and produced still in Bavaria, but shipped all throughout Germany, as well as to 60 other countries, including the US, where it has become really popular among both the hacker scene and the club and dancing scene. And then there has been a resurgence of extra mate sodas that have been made over the last decade. So I have here a photo of a couple ones that are been popular among the hacker scene in Europe. Floor Mate has taken over as the second runner-up to Club Mate, and we're hoping to produce some analogs to those here. And my dream is to try to get a bunch of mate sodas being produced in S, so we can have more variety here as well. So a bit about me. My name's Joe. I go by the Juggler in the hacker circles. I am a member of Pumping Station 1, which is the hackerspace in Chicago. I started brewing Club Mate a few years ago. And so I was introduced to Club Mate at a bar here in Chicago, and then wanted to learn how to produce the Club Mate soda and use it, acquire it cheaper.
Hang on. I need to maybe invite everybody who's not in the room into the room.
Yeah.
You fill dead air for a moment, please.
Hold on one second. There's a technical difficulty coming up.
I'm a little, just so you know, I'm your facilitator, so there is no one who's waiting to come in the room that I see.
Or tell me how to.
Everybody's in, Carl. There's a facilitator keeping track of that on here.
Oh, yes, okay. I thought that was me. Never mind. Back to the previously scheduled.
Thank you, Sir. So
oh.
So that takes us through to after I started producing the Club Mate and had learned about it, I got really interested in seeing all these other craft sodas. And so I started going to some of the Chaos events. In Germany, so this is a photo I took at last year's Congress of Fairy Dust. But I have been engaging heavily with the German mate community and learning about the different mate sodas out there and working on improving my recipe. And then began at the beginning of this year to launch a business to actually create, bottle my open source mate soda and sell it while also publishing the open source recipe and allowing other people to remix it along the way. So without further ado, I am going to start teaching you guys how to make Osmate, which is my open source mate soda recipe. So the hope in the in-person workshop was that people would be following along. I don't know how many people, can we get a show of hands in the chat? How many people actually have materials and are planning to brew along with me? Okay, a couple people. So Carl, if you wouldn't mind cutting the presentation and going over to the video cameras.
All right.
So for the people without carbonation, if you happen to have club soda or soda water, you can just sort of mix it in. And that's actually what I'm going to be doing here for ease of use, because the soda stream, as I mentioned already, is just a prop. It isn't actually working. But we'll jump back and talk about a few methods of carbonation after brewing. And if you're interested in doing this more, or producing it, or even making it in bigger batches and carbonating in bigger batches and putting it on, serving in like a draft system or setting up at your local hackerspace, we can talk about how you can do that as well. So while I get started, first thing is going to be boiling some water. So I'm going to get the water kettle boiling while getting everything else set up and show you guys what we need to do. So most important part of this is the mate. This is the one I've been buying. You can find it online. Alternatively, if you live in a bigger city, you can tend to find it in some forms of South American or Argentinian grocers. I have an Argentinian grocer here in Chicago that I've been purchasing the stuff off of by the kilogram for a few years now, and it's been working pretty well. So taking the vessel you want to brew in, I'm going to use this mixing cup. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of mate to do a 4-cup batch, which is what we're going to make now. I have a recipe published online that I will send a link out to as well, with some different ratios for larger and smaller batches. In hindsight, starting the water boiling before getting to this step would have been helpful.
Put the mate in front of the little screen can and get some like action. Oh, I meant the bag.
Oh. PH asked in the chat, which brand of mate do I use? Carl pulled it up there for us. You can jump back to that camera if you want. I've been using the Amanda brand mate. I've played around with a couple different mates, and there doesn't seem to be too much variation. But this is the one I've been working on the recipe with and playing around with. Somebody also mentioned having a seltzer with fruit in it. I think that would work pretty well. So along with the straight Club Mate clone I've been making, I've also been doing a couple different fruit flavored ones. I have a strawberry one I've been making where I add a sort of strawberry puree into it at the end. And then also a ginger one where it's sort of a spicy ginger soda combined with like a mate. That the recipes for those will be shared online later as well. So while the water is getting ready, talk a little bit about filtering out the mate. This is a process that in small scale, I found a couple different ways to do it. Some of them work better than others. The best one I found so far is a reusable coffee filter, like this thing. It does a decent job of filtering it out. Alternatively, if you have a tea brewing basket, you can use that, or reusable or disposable tea bags that you can fill with loose leaf tea work pretty well as well. But we're going to use this to filter out after we brew the mate. At larger scale, I have had success with brewing 5-gallon batches using a large brewing bag or nut milk bag. And so it scales up. Instead of a couple tablespoons, it becomes a couple cups of mate leaves, and the giant tea bag gets steeped in the water. The water is close to boiling now. Ideally, let it come to a full boil and let it come down a little bit, but I'm going to cheat. It's warm enough that it'll brew the tea. So we're going to want to pour in, for the 4-cup batch, 2 cups of water. And then let the mate steep in the water and brew for approximately 7 minutes. So that's working. I will take a look at the chats a bit more. Thank you, people doing metric conversion on the fly. Luce, I haven't actually tried making an analog to the winter blend mate yet. I agree with the assessment that it is quite yummy, but I haven't gone around to playing with that yet. As to water temperature, I've been brewing most of the batches by taking the water to boiling and then taking it off water heat before adding the leaves. And that has seemed to work out pretty well. Carl, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the presentation again. I'll go over a couple ways of carbonating while we're waiting on the 7 minutes to elapse. Just close the screen share.
Hey, look at that.
Hey, there we go.
All right.
So the basic steps we're going to be going through: boiling water, and we're steeping the mate is where we're at now. I'll end the waiting.
Okay, it's more.
Then we're going to be adding sugar, cooling the whole concentrated mate, and then we're going to be carbonating it. So if you mind skipping ahead a couple, Carl. So carbonation, we have a few different options. As we started talking about already, somebody knows the soda stream. One option that is available, seems the presentation on Big Blue Button has frozen a little bit.
It's white over here.
Same. You mind clicking through one more time?
Next slide.
There we go.
Okay.
So the soda stream we have in front of us is one option. They're commercially available and relatively cheap upfront. However, you have to pay for their custom ratios in between refills. You stay on that last slide, Carl. Yep, that's not the soda stream. The option I prefer for doing small batch carbonation is to actually set up a small carbonation system, like seen in the picture here. So you can get a CO2 cylinder and then a regulator to step it down around 30 to 50 psi for carbonating. And then you can get a cap that adapts a standard 1 or 2 liter bottle to a ball lock adapter, which is seen in here. Yeah, as Empty for Linus pointed out as well, you can get an adapter to fill a soda stream if you want something a little more nice looking than having a regulator kicking around on your countertop. Kaluz mentions food grade CO2. That's a good idea. However, most CO2 is food grade automatically. There is some industrial CO2 that has oil mixed in, but if it does not explicitly say it has oil mixed in, you're generally safe to use it as food grade CO2. Carl, if you can through the next slide. So this is a close-up of that adapter I'm talking about. So this thing screws on to the top of a 2 liter bottle or a 1 liter bottle, and then you can connect to it with a ball lock adapter like you would use for a home brewing keg straight from your CO2 line. And then you just connect up the carbon dioxide to the bottle of liquid and shake, and the CO2 dissolves inside of it. And then the final option, which we're going to be doing here for convenience, and it's the most widely available, is we can actually mix with club soda. And so it won't be as carbonated, but it will do the trick, and you don't need any special equipment to do it. You can just make a mix. So the soda we're steeping right now is actually, as you noticed, I said we're making a 4-cup batch. We're making 2 cups of the syrup right now. And that's going to yield us 4 cups of soda because we're going to mix it 1-to-1 either with water if we're going to go and stream it, or with the club soda directly to use it to cool it off.
Slides.
I think that's all of them.
Don't drink yet. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
All right.
So we got about 30 more seconds on the steeping, and then we can go and filter it off. Club soda have more carbonation than seltzer. I don't think so. I think it depends on the manufacturer. Different ones have more bubbles or less bubbles, but I think in general they are equivalent to one another. Okay. Club soda actually doesn't have quinine either. You're thinking of tonic water. Club soda and seltzer, in most cases, just equivalent to one another and unflavored. So our 7 minutes has gone by, and now we're going to filter out the tea. I'm going to pour it right into the filter basket and let it go through. If you're using a tea bag or a brewing basket, you can just lift it right out and not have to filter loose. Club soda does have a little salt in it. I find it actually helps bring out the flavor a little bit, and sometimes I'll add a bit of salt to the final mate. There we go. Let that finish filtering through. So once that's finished filtering, we're going to add the sugar. For sweetening the soda, I've found the best results with a dark brown sugar. I like the sort of caramely flavor it adds. When I've added a light brown sugar or just a white sugar, it has ended up being a little too sweet and doesn't have as much depth of flavor. Take that out of there. Push that in. And get these out of the way. So the sugar depends on the preference of how people like it. For the main recipe, I use, for a batch this size, 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. You can go up to 2 tablespoons of sugar, and it becomes a little more sweet. If you like your soda extra sweet, that works. It's still obviously a lot less sweet than most commercial sodas. And if you want it even less sweet, you can reduce the sugar or remove the sugar entirely if you feel so inclined. And for this, I'm going to do 1.5 tablespoons, roughly. Dark brown sugar. As I said, the light brown sugar I have had sort of bad results with. It's ended up being a little too sweet. I find the light brown sugar packs sort of more sweetness into it and less richness. And then just take a spoon and stir that up some so the sugar fully dissolves in there. I find using a machine to add the CO2 or using a tank to force carbonate in a bottle is significantly better than adding the club soda, mostly because you get more bubbles and it retains them longer. So in this case, you'd be only, when you mix club soda, you're only carbonating half of it. Or you might pass me that ice bath. Thank you. So now we need to cool off the concentrate because heat and carbonation are sort of the enemies of one another. So I am going to just sink this glass into a bucket of ice water. If I'm carbonating a bigger batch, I let it sit in the fridge for a few hours or overnight, but you can rush it with the ice. It's also a little easier to do if you are making the carbonation either with the tank or with the soda stream. You can actually put the ice right in at this point. So we have 2 cups of the brewed mate with the sugar in it here, and then we're going to be mixing that with 2 more cups of water. And so this is where the paths diverge if we're making it to force carbonate or if we're adding soda or seltzer to it. If we're adding soda or seltzer, this is all we need to do, and then we mix it 1-to-1 with the soda and seltzer once it's cold. If we're force carbonating, carbonating, we need to add 2 cups of still water into it first. And you can help speed up the cooling by making some of that still water ice that will melt and cool it off immediately. I haven't tried honey on it, primarily because my business partner and a handful of other friends around here are vegans, and so they, among that community, not all of them tolerate honey. So I've left that out. I imagine that'd be great, very good though. So the amount of brown sugar, anywhere from a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons, depending on how sweet you like it. I added 1.5 tablespoons is approximately where the ratio lands for the final version I've been bottling. But some people like it sweeter, some people like it less sweet.
Can you confirm steep for 7 minutes?
Yep. I just noticed the shared notes thing. That's really cool. I have not experimented with any of the other sweeteners besides straight sugar and brown sugar. I imagine they'd probably work fine. You'd lose a little bit of the caramely flavor, which might be detrimental. And I'd imagine you did a lot less too, because often those present as a lot more sweet in smaller quantities. So we're going to call this cold enough, and I'm going to throw a few ice cubes in with it. I'm going to transfer it into a bigger vessel for mixing back in momentarily. And we'll grab a couple ice cubes. And then at this point, as I said, if you have a soda stream or if you have a bottle or carbonating setup, you can force carbonate. You'd want to add 2 cups of still water into this. In my case, I'm going to just add 2 cups of club soda directly. And then give it a very slight stir to bring it all together. You don't want to stir too much because you'll let more of the CO2 out of there. And that's all there is to it. Anybody have any other questions on the brewing? Adding citric acid I have done a couple times, and it brings out the flavors a little bit more. I actually am allergic to citric acid, which is the reason I leave it out of my primary recipe. But it works relatively well for adding a bit more flavor and does, in theory, help preserve it a little longer. Axe asked, how long does it keep? I have kept it, if I keep it carbonated and under pressure, I've kept it for a few months with no problems. I have yet to let it sit for longer than 6 or 9 months and see what happens, because usually I drink it before then. For the commercial bottles I'll be selling, I'm saying best buy before 3 months out. But obviously in this format, when it's open in a pitcher, it goes away. So I've been brewing it also in bigger batches and carbonated in home brewing kegs, and then I keep it on tap here at the Hackerspace in Chicago, Pumping Station 1. And so it's under a constant few psi of CO2, and then can be poured out of a faucet, much like a draft beer. I can promise you it's wonderful and dangerous. So for storing a small amount, you can either pour it into bottles and keep them in bottles for use later, or you can set up a small kegerator. They make little 2.5 gallon Cornelius kegs, which are awesome for storing in something like a fridge. There's also a few growler-sized kegerators on the market. The U-Keg is one I know springs to mind, that you could both force carbonate in and then you could serve in either 1/2 gallon or gallon size. So while I'm continuing to answer questions, I am going to make my personal favorite way to enjoy mate. We all know it's great straight, but it is also an excellent mixer. And so I'm going to teach you guys how to make Chunk, the drink invented at the Chaos Computer Club events that is sort of a mate caipirinha. So for that, you're going to need some limes, some turbinado or cane sugar, and then mate and ice. Oh, definitely the booze too. So the Real Club Mate and a lot of the ones on the market add caffeine back in. Their primary reason for doing that is they lose a lot of the caffeine in the process of turning the mate into a mate flavored syrup. So since we're starting with real mate here and not turning into a syrup along the way, it continues to have the caffeine all the way through it. I have had trouble figuring out exactly how to measure the caffeine content. I believe it's a little bit less than the Real Club Mate, but not significantly. So make the chunk, cut the limes into slices, and throw them into a cup. Add a few pinches of the cane sugar. and muddle that together. And then, as promised, the booze, dark rum. Add a couple ounces of that. And finally, our fresh brewed club mate. And then you have a really refreshing, delicious cocktail. Not cachaça. I have not picked up and tried a cachaça mate, but I think that would be absolutely delicious. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Cachaça is a Brazilian liquor. I describe it as somewhere between like a rum and a tequila, and is the primary liquor in the drink that Chunk is based on, the caipirinha. Yeah, so I actually have been bottling this recipe after brewing larger batches in kegs, and then I bottle and cap it in that, and have been able to keep it for a few months with no problem. Oh, I didn't see. There we go. Skyrider asks, have I tried any recipes with natural carbonation or fermentation? I have not yet. I've been chatting with some people that brew kombucha to try to make a naturally fermented and naturally carbonated one, but we haven't experimented with it yet. I think it'd be really good, and I encourage you to do so and share your results. Sure. PH asked if I can talk a bit about the other flavors I've tried and more interesting mixes. The two big ones I've been working on that will be the two bottled versions available along with the original when my company starts selling in a couple months here are a ginger recipe. So I've been making that one the exact same as this, but instead of starting with water, I've been brewing a strong ginger tea. And then with the ginger tea, I've been proceeding the rest of this the same way I talked about here. And it ends up being sort of a hybrid spicy ginger ale mate soda that's been really good. And I'll be releasing the full recipe of that one up on my website, as well as the Hackaday.io page for this project. The second one has been a strawberry flavored mate, where I have brewed the mate exactly as is, and then before bottling, I've been adding a little bit of strawberry puree into the bottle, which has been very excellent. Was a really great summer drink. The strawberry and the mate end up playing really nicely together. And then I'm been interested in experimenting with some mate mead as well as mint mate, but haven't gotten around to playing with them yet. Yeah, so I want to try to ferment and make a mead, like a fermented honey wine, using mate as part of the base, so it ends up with some of the mate flavor in the final mead. Okay.
Why did you add the ice cubes?
To help cool it off. Carl, would you mind pulling up the presentation again?
Disable screen. Oh, never mind. Here it is.
You can skip to the last slide.
This is the last slide.
Nope.
All right, last slide.
So want to leave this slide up as we wrap up. If anybody has any further questions or is experimenting down the line and wants to share with me what they've come up with or ask more questions, here's my email address as well as my Twitter. Please feel free to reach out to me, get in touch, and I love talking to people about mate ad nauseum. Yes, I do hope to be shipping when the company opens, as well as selling in Chicago. I've been interesting learning experience in what it takes to take a packaged food company into existence in this country. I naively was telling people at Congress last year that I was going to begin selling in February or March. And even before the pandemic, that has proven to be woefully naive. So if anybody has questions about starting a food business, I can also try to answer those from how to DIY that with no former experience in selling packaged food.
Anybody in the United States wants a frozen vegan pizza?
That's an interesting idea. Please. I have not considered selling a raw syrup, but it'd be a cool thing to play around with. And the goal, my big goal with starting the company is to encourage people to produce their own as well. So the recipe is printed on the bottles. The recipe is fully open source. And my hope is that the website's going to start acting as a place for people to come back and share their own recipes and their own remixes. And so hopefully we can get a community of people brewing different mate sodas in the US and maybe even have a few more commercial ones out there. Twitter is probably the best place to keep up with how the project's going. There's also a Hackaday.io page that I can share the link to, where I've been documenting the progress as it goes. And then my website, osmatesoda.com, will be giving more updates as they come along as well. Okay, well, thank you guys all for coming to the workshop. I hope it was interesting and useful. And I'm happy to hang out here and keep answering questions if anybody got them. Otherwise, that concludes everything I got for you guys.
We could do it again. All right. Wait. Didn't. Oh, hang on. Cancel. Unmuted.
I actually haven't tried any of the Gayaki brand mates. As far as I can tell, they have yet to put out an actual carbonated one, or just a straight mate flavored one. But I've been meaning to pick up a couple and try them out. What about you guys? Has anybody tried them and enjoyed them? Ah, awesome to hear you were at the Pumping Station 1 10th anniversary weekend. Yeah, if you had tried the mate there, the mate out on tap there was the same recipe. And I was the guy behind the bar serving it to you, probably. I'm going to share also the Pumping Station 1 wiki page where I have some of the initial project written up. Yeah, I'll take a look at the shared notes. And the shared notes look good. So thank you everybody for, I don't know who's contributing to writing the recipe out as I was going, but much appreciated.